Sometimes it's good to be singled out, perhaps for commendation on your job or something like that. And sometimes it's not so good. I remember in school when the teacher would call out my name, and if she said Mr. McGuire, I knew that there was probably bad news that was going to follow. And then sometimes, we've all been singled out for something, a commendation perhaps. And there's times I can think back on and I can remember where I was when I was singled out, and not always positive, sometimes though. And in Luke 22:31, the Apostle Peter was singled out from all the 12. The Lord said in Luke 22:31, Simon, Simon. He said his name 2 times. And when he says it twice, that's emphatic. He's pulling him away from the rest of them, and he goes, this is just you. Indeed, Satan has desired for you, or had asked you, that he may sift you as wheat. He has actually asked for you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith should not fail. And when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. Now that's all he needed to hear right there. But he said to him, Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death. Then he said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster shall not crow this day before you will deny 3 times that you know me. And there is that part of us that we think we know how we would respond. And then there's that part of reality of how we will respond. And God deals with the latter. He deals with how he knows we'll respond. And he knows what our tomorrows hold. And he knows our integrity, plus and minus. He knows our integrity. But we can learn a lot here from how Jesus dealt with that approaching attack that Peter was certain to sustain here. This was not a demonic presence of a lower level demon, but Satan himself had set his sights on one whom he might have figured, by observation and words, that he was to play a major role in the future of the church. And so one thing to grasp, really before going forward, is the devil is always going to attempt to defeat God's people. And if we go through a season where we have been protected and we don't feel him and we don't confront him and we have no problems, we're probably not that much of a threat. And sometimes it's a sign. I know he leads us through, still waters, beside still waters, and he leads us, through wonderful places that we can just kind of go on a sightseeing tour. But we also know that we have to go through valleys of struggle and times when our faith is really put to the test. But through the words that followed, we can see a prayer that never fails. It's a prayer for a specific blessing with intentional purposes, and also for the continuation of the spiritual efforts, and not praying with a weak hope that you might keep walking, but with a clear direction for your life beyond today. A prayer with definite faith and definite directions. And he said, I pray that your faith doesn't fail. He didn't say, I'm trying to do everything I can to keep anything from happening. He said, but I'm praying for your faith that you can maintain it. Here we see that of all the things we possess, faith is of far greater importance than any of our earthly possessions. And let that sink in for a moment. Because our faith, that's where we access the power of his presence. That's where we access the glory of God, the working of God, that intervention of God is our faith. And when faith gets weak, or when faith fails, then everything else can quickly fall to pieces. And, when faith fails, we see people jump on a ship like Jonah and go the opposite direction We step into the role of trying to be the priest like King Saul did on the battlefield that day, and because he didn't want to wait on Samuel, or we stop praying. And that's really the most common thing we do, is when we think the things we're fighting against, they take too much of our time and we're dealing with them on an earthly level, then we'll stop doing heavenly things. And when we begin to deal on that earthly level and we begin to see the results of that, they're never going to be going upwards. But notice what Jesus said. He is our example. But I have prayed for you. Satan wants to sift you as wheat, but I've prayed for you. Think about what is in those words right there. It's words we use all the time. Hey, I'm praying for you. Think about it. Are we really praying for that person? Or do we have intentions of setting aside time to pray? And I fear that term, that sentence, I'm praying for you, has been cheapened somewhat because it's almost a salutation. Hey, I'm praying for you. God bless you. I'll see you later. But when you think about what is encapsulated in that one statement, I am praying, it's not about the I, it's about the praying. I'm bringing God into this situation. And here is the main point today, is we don't need to lose faith in our own prayers. I know we have faith in others, and we have people, our favorites, who we know get a hold of God. But if we have lost our faith in our very own prayers, we've lost the most valuable asset that we have, because faith in our ability to get a hold of God is paramount, because that's what changes our world and changes the world of other people. And when your faith fails, you turn and you go the other way, like Jonah did. Instead of going to Nineveh, I'm going to go the opposite direction. His faith totally failed. Or like King Saul did, he said, I'm not going to wait on Samuel. I'm going to go ahead and do the sacrifice, because he was nervous and the enemy was out there and his men were getting restless. And because of human pressure, he was impulsive. But the real issue was his faith failed. And when our faith is weak, it's usually looking at the earthly scoreboard, and we're looking at this happened and this happened and this happened. There is a place, it's a malady truly in the church, that people have so little faith in their prayers and so little faith in their ability to pray. They feel that they know, they're at a point where they know that I'm just really not a praying person. And when we lose that right there, the enemy is really able to do about anything. And we need to understand, I want us to renew our faith in faith and renew our faith in prayer. And here we are going through the first month, and we're going through the prayer and fasting, praying daily, progressively giving up things that, are maybe difficult, not so much at first, but it's getting serious now. This is the time for us to recognize how important our faith is, and that we pray with faith believing. But the word faith here is not just belief, but it means faithfulness, staying at your post, continuing to do what you've been called to do. Mark 9:23 and 24, Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him that believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. And that's where we live right there. That's our address. I believe, but I need help with my unbelief. I believe in things that have happened, but my unbelief is in front of the things that need to happen. And so we need to try to push the unbelief aside and understand it's not you that's doing it. It's God. And we suffer far more from what we don't believe than what we do believe, if you think about it. Because when we don't believe, then we open the door and the attack can come. And when we step off onto unbelief, unfortunately, hopelessness hopelessness settles in. And Jesus said to Simon, he said, and when you have returned, and to me, those are the most important words of this discussion. When you have returned, in other words, there's an end here, and you're going to be back. And when you have returned, this shows the intentional plan of God in Peter's life. It's that linear focus of purpose that will continue regardless of our feeling of fear or faith. When you have returned, that's how the Lord deals with us. Not if, but when. Because if you love God and you serve God, it's not going to be an if, but it's going to be a when. You know, everything, you're going through, it started at some point. And if it started, then it has an end game. It has an end time. It's going to end. And when you've returned, when you get back up, when you overcome, when you conquer your enemy, when you rise up, from the ashes, when you realize that your failures are not final, you're going to strengthen your brethren. See, isn't it great to get on that side of the problem, to get past the issue and turn around and see others that are now where you were, and you can go to them and say, let me give you some encouragement. Let me tell you that you just have to keep on going, put one foot in front of the other. That's really the greatest part. Instead of telling Simon Peter that all hope was lost, he invites him to participate in the next stage of kingdom building. Not, there'll be a nice room at you at a convalescent home, but you're going to be the one picking these other guys up. You're going to be the one encouraging them. He didn't understand yet. He didn't see the day of Pentecost from that vantage point. But we know that it was coming. And that way we're able to see the steps that were taken. And then instead of Simon giving up, he stood up on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. And he preached that message of salvation. And God already knew that was in store. But he's telling him, between now and your great advancement, between your great demonstration, there are these things that the enemy is trying to do. But I've prayed for you that your faith doesn't fail. See, we can get knocked down, but we're going to get back up. We can get pushed back, but we can keep on coming at the devil. We can keep on doing the things we need to do because our faith will be intact. That's all that's required. The temptation to focus inward it's really universal. We look at ourselves and we mark ourselves down. We think we're half price and, but I can't, but I've been through this. This is where I always seem to mess up. But our help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. We have to realize from whence cometh our help. It comes from the Lord. He's on our side, just like he was with Simon. He said, I prayed for you. This should never be said casually or as a filler in a sentence. And I realize that this is one of these things that we say so much. Hey, I'm praying for you. And it's almost like just saying, how are you doing? It's one of those things we say. And we probably aren't going to quit saying it. It's a kind thing. It's a kind gesture. And we figure in time, we are going to pray for them. We're not just trying to set somebody aside or push them away. But when you realize what Jesus said, he said, I prayed for you. We need to revisit the importance and the power of prayer. And so that statement can mean more than I hope things get better. But when we say, I prayed for you, we can truly mean it and know that your situation's not going to be what it is because God's going to change because I've prayed for you. We must grasp again during this season the power of prayer. It is powerful. And when we know it's powerful, then we know that we can defeat that apathy, that habit of just saying prayers or just asking God, Lord, bless everybody. And we know that when we get alone with God, we are powerful. We are at our most powerful when we're alone with God. We must grasp the power of prayer for our brother and sister. And don't equate it with how you feel when you pray. Just know that when you're praying, that God is hearing you and great things are being done. And when God can trust us to pray, he will give us things to pray about. But he also will give us testimonies. He will allow you to see the victories. We must realize that our praying is saving someone else. Our praying is changing the world around us. Because when coupled with faith, prayer is so powerful. Hebrews 11:32, he said, "And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, and Samson, and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith they subdued kingdoms and worked righteousness. They obtained promises and stopped the mouth of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection." Well, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. And I mean that. It's not just a statement made to fill a gap, but think about the power in that statement. I prayed for you.